that gruesome?
Ooh, Whitlock?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say he definitely is like a black person that is like a talking piece for like the white agenda. He's like he's the opposite of whatever FUBU is, you know? He's not for us, by us. He's looks like us, works for them. It's like, at what point are we talking about sports, or are you just using this as an opportunity to like personally attack someone?
Mm-hmm. So, speaking about a person like that, what do you think about, if we say like a Candice Owens?
I think that there's more nuance to that. Like, yeah, there's a bunch of things that I disagree about when it comes to her, but she does have valid points, and ultimately she has a different perspective on what, like, you know, where and how black people can exist in America. And that's, honestly, I think she's like not a necessary evil, but it's like, okay, black people love to, as much as we say the black experience is not a monolith, right? Like, we're not all the same, one carbon copy, have the same experience. But then when we are offered a variety of perspectives on the black experience, if it's not in line with certain things that maybe culturally the majority of us agree with, we reject it.
Right.
So someone like that immediately is rejected on the basis of certain people she surrounds herself with or some of the hot takes she has. But I feel like that's like, you know, leaving money on the table. Like, there is value to some of her opinions, and like the whole point of having healthy discourse is someone like that being able to come to the table with someone who has a completely different opinion, and then being able to respect each other and have discourse. So,
which is definitely valuable and healthy and necessary.
Exactly. So that's where it's like, yeah, it's a shame that like we're in this sensationalist, polarizing era of, you can't operate in the gray. You're either black or white. You're blue or you're red. And, you know, that's where the money is. So people are going to play that up. But, yeah.
I know a lot of people do not like her. They don't even want to hear a word coming out of her mouth. Not even a thing, you know?
And that's the bias of like, you can't even listen and discern from this is valuable information versus this is not valuable information because of who it's coming from. And like, that's a limited, like, that's a self-limitation you're placing on yourself.
For sure, that's a good way to look at it. Definitely self-limiting. Because, yeah, I don't agree with everything she says. But also, there's some amazing points that she has that you have to take into consideration.
Yeah, she's not necessarily making up the statistics. It's maybe how she's choosing to interpret them and then justify her argument. In a lot of cases, that's an issue. But that's not what the actual problem is. The problem is those statistics to begin with, right? So if we're not talking about the solution and we're bickering, or we're not even listening, we're not having discourse, we're not actually improving on the situation. So that's where it's unfortunate, because it's like, imagine if she had it's like someone like that is never going to be like championed or supported or given a platform on like, you know, the BETs of the world. But imagine if they were like placed in those environments, and as you know, instead of being worried about them influencing us, we're more so concerned about rubbing off on them. I think that would create a much healthier environment. Like, even just the other day, I saw this random clip. It was like a clip from like a news show, and I don't know if it was like the 70s or the 80s, but it was Farrakhan talking with this white guy, and clearly they don't agree. But they were able to have a conversation about the things that they clearly do not agree about. And it's like, obviously different times, but it's just like that basic ability to sit across the table from someone that you don't agree with.
Right.
It's like there's so much like to benefit from that. And that also, you know, really allows you to really see, you know, the depths of what you actually believe, right? As opposed to just being in a room where everyone agrees with what you're going to say anyway. Like, there's no discourse. You're not going to improve necessarily from that environment, or at least in certain ways. But I don't know. People don't know how to respect each other when they don't agree anymore.
So what do you think about the Katt Williams stuff? You watched it?
Oh yeah. I didn't see the whole interview, but I saw a healthy amount of clips. I mean, he definitely, again, that's a perfect example of like, I don't agree with everything he said, but he does bring up a lot of good points, and there's a reason why he's not in certain rooms or his career isn't in a certain space.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean everything he said is like factual. Like a hot topic right now is the whole like, oh, black men wearing dresses in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And I would say for every black actor that's ever, any black man that's ever worn a dress in Hollywood, there's a white actor or comedian that's worn a dress in Hollywood.
Mm.
And really, I think it's misguided homophobia within the black community. But where's the space for the black community itself to have conversations about homophobia and dismantling that? So instead, it gets lost and jumbled into this, conversation of oppression.
Mm.
It's like Kurt Cobain can wear a dress, and we don't view him as a homosexual, and he's, respected by his contemporaries and is able to express himself and have autonomy in his identity. But if Kid Cudi does the same thing, we immediately challenge his gender expression or his sexual orientation. It's not viewed as an art thing, it's viewed as a sexual orientation thing.
Mm.
But like hypermasculinity in the black community is related to slavery, and like all of these ways we feel we need to overcompensate to protect ourselves in society, right? Like, boys don't cry, but you can be damn sure that black men don't cry. It's like, but that's like, it's all rooted in those same things. But if we're not educating ourselves on like, well, why is that? Or even like, especially, like the Caribbean is a very homophobic place, but we don't really look at the history of how like buck breaking was done on plantations, where, okay, you would take the biggest, strongest black man, tie him to a post, and essentially emasculate him and make him do homosexual acts and beat him in front of everyone to get people to get in line. So homosexuality was weaponized in certain ways during slavery. So there's obviously, couple that with indoctrination into Christianity, like there's going to be very aggressive ripple effects to that.
Yeah.
So, hundreds of years later, you have Katt Williams saying, oh, don't put me in a dress, you're trying to X, Y, and Z me. It's like, maybe it's not that deep. Maybe as long as you're in control of your autonomy and you understand why you're doing whatever it is you're doing, you're in control of that. But for it to be inherently wrong or bad or negative or homosexual or anything for a man to be in a dress, it's like you're actually, again, that is a limiting, you're placing a self-limiting belief on yourself the moment that happens.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's like one of the millions of things that he said in that interview. Like that could be its own podcast interview, right?
Man, oh man.
It also just speaks to like, well, maybe if you think that's inherently homosexual, it's like maybe you should spend more time in those communities around those people and actually understand and see them for who they are and not what your ignorant idea of what they are is, right? No, that's what's like, we're no better than white people saying things like, oh, black people go to college for free, affirmative action is taking jobs away from you, or or the whole like Ivy League school thing that like a lot of Asian people brought to court.
What was that about?
That was a whole thing about affirmative action, essentially was making it harder for Asians to get into Ivy League schools, and going back to like using numbers to fit your narrative instead of understanding what's going on. So that was essentially used to help like delegitimize and kind of dial back certain like initiatives to help African Americans get into Ivy League schools, right? Where it's like, no, that's like a misunderstanding of how systemic racism works and how that is a tool to help even the playing field. Like, your qualm isn't with black people, it is with the oppressor, which is white people. And making it harder for a black person to get into an Ivy League school is not going to translate into making it easier for an Asian person to get into an Ivy League school. But that's where like the misstep happens. But again, who are the people having these conversations and, you know, leading the way, and ultimately what is their end goal, right? Everyone is selfishly just trying to get what they want. They're not necessarily trying to understand like what's actually going on here and how does it affect everyone, because not everyone cares about everyone. Everyone cares about themselves, right? Like that's the Western approach, right? Mm-hmm. Community is dead.
Community is dead.
It's not how do we fix the problem, it's how do I avoid having to deal with the problem so it doesn't affect me.
Have you got to take in any of the new Look Raptors?
Yeah, I worked that first game, the New Year's Day game. And honestly, there was definitely more optimism, energy in the building. We won that game even though it was close. The Laker game the other night was obviously whack, but it's LeBron and the Lakers. What do you expect?
What do you expect?
And that particular ref, you know, at this point now we're starting to develop history with him. But
oh, is that the same guy that Fred VanVleet?
I'm pretty sure, yeah. So this is one of those situations where it's like, you know, the underlining big picture thing is we're definitely moving in the right direction. I wonder if and when we're going to move Siakam. But, yeah, for me the big pickup is Emmanuel Quickly. It's nice to have RJ Barrett and he's playing well and it's a better system for him, but the Scotty Barnes-Emmanuel Quickly pairing is like, I think, the important aspect of the trade. So, and in some ways, like, again, like, if we know we're not winning a championship this year, it's more about the value from every win and loss, and seeing how they played and came back and the way that they lost, and then how the coach spoke about it in the press conference after. I actually think we're going to net more positives from the experience than negatives. Because he, you know, coach was pissed and showed his emotion and his support for his team. Probably will get fined for it. And, you know, more or less we played pretty decent. Yeah, I think like that's the type of like moment that brings the team closer together. So,
well, we played way more than decent. We scored 134 points that game.
And like, you know, putting those types of numbers up was kind of an issue up until this point, right? So
when I watched the game, as soon as the game was done, I opened up my phone and I went to see like the box score. I wanted to see what everybody scored. Five of our players were in the 20s.
That's
right.
Good. Yeah.
So I was like, oh snap! Like these guys are balling. So then I went to go look at the field goals because we lost by a point, 134, 135. We outscored them on the field goal percentage. Like not even percentage. We scored more buckets. Like you know what I mean?
It's one of those things where it's like winning by 1 point is really a coin toss when you think about it statistically. As far as like who like really was winning the game, who played a better brand of basketball, who improved, like going back to just like we gained more out of that game even though we lost, and I think the Lakers gained escaping losing, because winning is kind of like a band-aid over the issues that they have as like elephants in the room. So
right.
But yeah, second half of the season is definitely going to be better than the first half. Like you can see the camaraderie and the vibes are like in a better place, and yeah, I'm just curious to see what's going to happen with Siakam, because that man is very clear on, I want the max and I'm not going to play just anywhere.
Well, here's the thing is that I knew, like, going into the season, that's what we knew, right? He wants the max, and he has to get that. That's only available to him if he stays in Toronto, but also only if he makes the All-NBA team.
Yep. So he also has incentive to play well.
But if the Raptors don't do good, then he doesn't make the All-NBA team.
Yep.
And the way that the team was looking now, so far, is like, Raptors aren't going to do good enough for him to be able to make the All-NBA.
Well, I'd say there's just enough time left in the season
to turn it around
for that to happen.
I hope so for him.
But at the same time, we could trade him, right? That's the crazy thing.
He's going to make it hard for you to trade him because...
Oh, he's already making it hard.
He's going to tell people, well, I ain't signing, so...
But this is also a way to, like, get a feel for, like, okay, if he wasn't a Raptor, where do you want to play? Because that's really what the question is. And does that team want you, and at the price that you want? So until we're having that conversation, he needs to play the best quality of basketball he needs if he wants to hit that benchmark of all NBA.
Well, he's doing a good job.
Yeah.
I think so, at least.
And the other thing too is like not trading him. I don't think is the worst idea. Right? It's more about fit and what does the team look like. Because if there isn't a team that he wants to play for, or he can contend for a championship, or a trade that makes sense for us, we might as well pay him and maintain having that high caliber of a player.
Right.
And just keep developing and being better, right? Because he can be the type of person that, okay, if we get into the playoffs, again, he's seen the entire process from a G League championship to the real thing. So that type of insight is hard to come by.
What's the difference between Emmanuel Quickly and R.J. Barrett?
Well, first, from a position and fit standpoint,
Yeah.
Quickly is like a point guard that's going to be able to run our offense, hit open shots, play on the ball, and play off the ball.
Okay.
So his skill set is going to not only complement but also enhance Scotty Barnes. And then with R.J. Barrett, he's, again, more of like a scoring guard. But as far as his stability in the act of scoring, I think that's where he needs to take steps forward.
R.J. Barrett.
Yeah. Like, I need to feel like maybe not that you're demanding a double team because you're so hot, but you're going to give me 25 every night consistently. And I don't have to, worry about not getting that from you offensively. Every now and then give me a night where you're going to go off, like literally the way he's been playing right now. But again, this is like
small sample size?
Exactly. And then on top of that, what happens once we hit the playoffs is the other thing too, right? So it's kind of the tale of two things. Be more consistent as an offensive threat every night at a high clip. And then when we get to the playoffs, be even better. So until we're in those scenarios and have been for a bit, it's just focus on building game by game. But with Quickly, that's like him and Scotty Barnes, I can see that being like staples in our franchise moving forward. Quickly's one of those guys where it's like, in 4 years, he could be an all-star, and then they might look at the weight. What did they trade to get OG? It's like we gave them Emmanuel Quickly, but he's like a star. So that's one of those I look forward to, like fast-forwarding in a few years to see where Scotty Barnes and Emmanuel Quickly are, because I feel like that's when we'll know who really won the trade.
Well, you let New York tell it right now. Their fans are like putting up statistics saying that OG is playing all NBA caliber basketball, contributing.
All they're doing is snitching on themselves. They're just revealing the anti-Raptor bias that the league has, because he's playing the exact same way he was playing a week ago. He's just doing it in New York next to Jalen Brunson.
Right.
Like, he's not suddenly in the 90th percentile of corner threes. He's been shooting that way this whole season, right? Like, he didn't make all those stats in New York. So, but I'm happy for him. I'm happy for them. You want him to be cherished and appreciated and play well. But I think New York's gonna make another move as well too.
They're gonna make another move, you say?
Oh yeah. If it's not at the trade deadline, it'll be at the end of the season.
What position you think they're looking to trade?
I think it's a star/big. So either a star and or a big.
A big, huh?
Yeah. I don't know if Randall is going to be there long term.
Oh?
Yeah. Because they have good centers. And if you have like good above average center like in your rotation, you have OG, you have Jalen Brunson. The kind of the loudest trading chip now in my mind is Julius Randle. So you could trade him to get filler pieces to round out your roster and have that cap space to get a superstar. Or you trade to get that superstar.
So what are they going to do? They're going to trade with Toronto again?
No.
Pascal?
No. That would be like, first off, Masai is, I would say, undefeated in his trades. He knows that we do not need or desire Julius Randle. That's not going to do anything for us. Like, I remember when Masai was at Denver, He's the one that handled the Carmelo Anthony trade.
Right.
And I just remember being so impressed with that trade. Because it's like, obviously you never want to trade a Carmelo Anthony type player.
It's a nerve.
But they got so much back in return that I remember just being like, man, I wish we had a guy like Masai. And then like a year later he came here and I was just like, whoa, I can't believe this happened.